On this episode of AV Week, we talk about how your company needs to be IT-centric. Should we be tracking you and the ramifications? And what does a Nobel Prize award-winning carbon fiber layer mean to you? These topics and more on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Ready.
AV Week.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AV Week. AV Week.
Hello, everybody. This is AV Week, your source for news and information in the integration AV world. I'm your host today, George Tucker. Welcome to the show. Thank you for watching. This week, we have a really cool set of stories and some really cool guests. Let's introduce them to get the show started. First off, we have Bruce Kaufmann. He is from Human Circuit. Good day to you, sir.
Good day to you, George. Looking forward to this.
All right. Thanks for being on.
Absolutely.
Also, we have with us today, John Thomas. He is from Visetech. Sir, good to see you.
Hi, George. Hi, Bruce. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and I said earlier, but I love your backdrop. I mean, you said it's your office, but man, that's fabulous.
It's much cooler than mine anyway.
I want the TV, is what I want. All right, so let's get started with some of the stories today. The first off we have, well, it's one that we have talked about quite a bit, but we don't seem to quite get it. From our friends at Commercial Integrator, want to succeed in AV from 5 years from now? Get IT-centric. If we haven't gotten it now, gentlemen, here's the article to help us get there. All right, so we have known for many, many, many years that IT is here, it's coming, but we don't seem to always be the industry that gets it. We still seem to be fighting for our own little space. John, I'm going to start with you on this one. IT-centric. Most of our industry is still not investing more in IT than they are in AV. How can we change that?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the way that we recruit employees. We tend to have a way that we define ourselves. Part of the reason that we define ourselves in the traditional AV mode is because the majority of people in the industry have been there for many, many years. In fact, in an AVNation survey not that long ago, earlier in the year, 40% of those who responded to the survey had been in the AV industry for 20 years or longer. Only 7% in that AVNation survey have been in the industry for 5 years or less, which indicates to me that we are sorely in need of IT-centric thinking among the people that work in this industry.
Bruce, so John brings up a good point that we're not really focusing on the right centric people, and it's the way we train and sort of focus ourselves. But the answer is not millennials, is it? Because we find that many of those millennials don't know nearly as much as we think they do. So how do we convince ourselves from top to bottom that this is the way to go and that we have to rearrange?
Yeah, you know what? My favorite subject, we start dividing the generations, but I don't think it's a generational issue per se. It's an industry-wide issue. Recruitment to our industry in the way that we describe ourselves is problematic because we're not going to attract necessarily people who believe that their world, the IT world, is higher thinking to begin with. So AV becomes unattractive in the way that we describe it. We think the problem really emanates actually from the manufacturing side. The foot drag is on the manufacturing side, which then in turn makes the recruitment more difficult. As long as the manufacturers continue to drag their feet about meeting the standards and the best practices of IT, things that are routable, signals that are routable, that's going to be the problem with really becoming IT-centric or becoming IT or with one with IT. So I think it's more of a manufacturing issue than it is really a personnel issue. If manufacturing drops their guard and becomes part of IT, then we'll be able to recruit proper IT people to our offices.
Well, you make a good point, but my question really comes down to sort of infrastructure. You say from the manufacturing side, although they are supplying, every item now has a IT port or an Ethernet port of some sort. I mean, not always do everything we want it to, right? But it has something. Are we not seeing the forest for the trees, as the statement goes, in that it really isn't about the ecosystem we think? It's the ecosystem that is there on the consumer side. It's there on the corporate IT side, that everything hangs off of one backbone. And we're failing to see that that backbone really is our ticket, our train ride into getting our systems. No, John?
Well, there has to be a recognition that with integrators, they're seeing less and less traditional cabling going on in their infrastructure, in their integration, in their services, and they're seeing a lot more of content being transferred over IT infrastructure, over Ethernet, over self-contained networks. And I think what's happening is that we have yet to educate our people internally about that format, about that process. It really is the new format for everything from content creation to content distribution. I'm not sure if I agree with Bruce about the manufacturers being the driving force behind this. I really do think, I think the manufacturers are heading in that direction, but also we're seeing a lot more from companies like Extron and Crestron and Cisco and all the others who are driving their IT-centric equipment. Part of it, though, and I go back to the way that we define ourselves. And my reference before to years of service doesn't necessarily indicate generational differences as much as career differences. We've got a lot of people who've been here for many, many years who still think in the old way. Correct, that's generational. But employees who have been here for less than 5 years, less than 10 years, typically those are people we would have recruited from other industries than a traditional AV person would have come from. Traditional AV people came from the sound recording industry, came from broadcast, came from whatever, music. In the last 10 years, we really have been trying to recruit people from the IT industry, from the web content creation industry, from people who are really focused on computer science and other technologies. We can teach anyone AV with the right mentoring and the right training, but what we can't teach them is how to think about things, how to mold their approach to communication and integration in a different way than what we've traditionally looked at.
That's a huge point, and it really does kind of come to the crux of that. We're still not seeing that part now, but I do have something for Bruce. You mentioned the manufacturers, and that really sort of focuses on hardware. No, is it really something that we're missing in that ecosystem, that it's become more of a service industry than we're used to saying? I mean, we've always said we're a service industry, but we're really sort of providing a cloud access to things that may involve hardware, but not always the stuff we access. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's less and less of the hardware. When I talk about the manufacturers, that does not leave out the software manufacturers as well. When I look at the vendors calling on us across the board, the personnel issues are legit across the board. But I'm at the mercy, if I'm not going to manufacture my own hardware and software, I'm at the mercy of what is provided to me. And while that network port, as you mentioned, has been put on the back of every single object that's out there, what does it actually do has become a big deal. Does it actually play well? I can tell you on a weekly basis, my engineers are frustrated with the fact that the rules are broken by proprietary schemes on these things. Cloud is being shouted as a big answer right now. In a lot of ways, it's very invasive to our clients and the way that they want to do business. It's not the end-all, be-all in a lot of cases. There's some security concerns. There's an invasion to the relationship, quite frankly, from some cloud providers between us and our clients. So the whole cloud software thing is a little bit tricky in and of itself, but we're still at the mercy of the hardware that's provided in our industry that's part of the front end to the delivery to the network. And that's become very, very difficult. I mean, it's enabled, but not necessarily by the rules.
What would you say would be an action plan for a manufacturer to make that transition that would satisfy your needs? Give me an idea of what you think a manufacturer should begin doing, and what their timeline should be as far as integrating more network standards within their manufacturing, within their software, within their approach to our business.
Well, the timeline, frankly, was yesterday. I mean, we're behind. We're 5 years behind, 10 years behind. We've been talking about the convergence and the IT-centric thing for 10, 15 years. We've made the suggestions to manufacturers over the years. They're, if they play on the network, they're not necessarily up to the latest speeds and the bandwidth requirements that are there. I think really what it takes is the product development people need to fully embrace, and maybe we need to hire from the IT industry for the product development people to really understand what the networking is. I mean, I can use examples of us avoiding it with things like HD-based T. AVB is another one that truly avoids the idea of what a true network should be about. You can't switch it. We need to drop the proprietary nature of the way we approach things, trying to lock in business. I think it's a mindset more than it is a know-how. I know these product development people are very, very smart individuals. They've come up with some great product. But I think it's really paying attention that if there was a battle, and I don't like to think of it that way, if there was a battle between industries, it's over. The IT industry is king at this point. Our customers, our best customers, our CIOs, directors of ITs, and the IT department. And we know part of our job at this point is to let them sleep at night. So if I'm going to prescribe the proper Ambien at this point, I need to have equipment that allows them to sleep, equipment and hardware and software when I say equipment. So we know that, again, we're constantly dealing with the issues of troubleshooting network problems that have to do with the actual implementation of the firmware or latest revs of the software that seem to break the network every time.
So you think, the nice thing about standards is that there are so many to choose from. But you think that our industry is too focused on creating its own standards, including the manufacturers, that are too separate from the IT standards, IT industry?
I do. I think there's a protectionist view, so to speak, that there's a paranoia, I think, that our current manufacturers are the ones we've been with forever will render themselves obsolete by playing the game, that we won't be as beholden to them as we might, that new challenges will come up, which is happening anyway. I look at a great example of Logitech. Logitech comes from that side of the industry. I can go to Best Buy tomorrow, and this gets into the argument about margins and all those types of things, but quite frankly, there's a manufacturer from the IT side of the industry, from the consumer IT side of the industry, who is manufacturing to the rules and the laws of IT. And they are going to be very successful in that. Is that good for our industry? Not necessarily. Is it good for the client? I'll say not necessarily there either, because it may be shooting short of satisfying the customers at a higher level and making their lives more productive and better. It may shortchange some things on the technology side, but it definitely plays by the rules, and it makes IT personnel comfortable. And I think part of our job going forward is to take, whether you're on the AV or the broadcast side, or the enterprise video deployment side of things, like we're moving into, the OTT, not only do you have to walk the walk and talk the talk, but your manufacturers have to get your back as well in order to say, listen, we're part of the same industry and not separate. We're still looking for separation here. It may not be as intentional as that, but it sure appears that way.
Well, all right, there's obviously, we can talk much more about this topic, and maybe we should do a special on it, but it's obviously something we need to address, even though we've been trying to address it for a long time. Moving on, though, to something about hardware from our friends at Digital Trends. While this seems a little bit more, say, residential, it really does involve us. From Digital Trends, you need HDMI 2.0 to enjoy 4K, but do you need new cables? Well, yes, the everlasting question. Do we need a new cable for a new format? So, John, I'm going to start with you. 4K, the Digital Trends guys give us a little grid here about what works where and how to choose. first off, do you find that this is actually addressing future proofing, or do you think they're short selling the standard?
It's a good question. I don't know if they're short selling the standard. It's a transition period now between standard 1920 by 1080 and 4K or UHD. And I think in that transition, we have a lot of existing infrastructure which is going to be relegated to be good enough for whatever 4K applications we're going to see in the next couple of years. We don't have a whole lot of control over HDMI choices. It's a standard created by their HDMI.org standards committee. They're going to establish whatever standards that they want as far as meeting the 4K and UHD application needs. There's a huge difference between HDMI as we know it now than we did 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Right now, we have a lot more signals being transmitted through HDMI cables with Ethernet and audio that we haven't had before. DisplayPort has yet to catch up. DisplayPort still does not have an Ethernet channel. It does not have an audio channel for the applications that HDMI 4K has established. I think if I were an integrator today, if I were specifying a new system, absolutely I would use cables that met every bit of the 4K specification. I have no control over what that customer is going to do in 6 months. When that cable gets pulled out, they take it home or they bring another one in because they had it in their drawer in their family room and plugged it in, and then their performance is reduced. But I do think we have to be very careful with new installations to make certain that everything we specify is going to meet all of the standards established by the application.
Bruce, they talk about these standards, and John talks about these standards that we could possibly use, but are we still dealing, though, with confusion on the consumer side where even the hokum cable, those really fancy cables that the guy wanted in his house, have to be brought into our commercial environment because the guy who's overseeing it wants it? Or do you find that we're getting a better understanding these days of that HD 4K signal in our installations?
Well, I think we're definitely getting a better understanding. I think it was a very fast learning curve, obviously. 4K came in, twice as fast or 3 times as fast as HD did. So I think the education is very quick, and I think we've been, as an industry, been pretty good to catch up. We've got to still pay attention to the devices themselves, the cards, the interconnects. I want to say cabling is the least concern, and I think there's some confusion by the manufacturing industry on HDMI. Obviously not an integrator's friend. We can't field terminate it, so that's not one of our favorite things. But, the misnomer, so to speak, about high-speed HDMI cable versus 2.0, high speed takes care of 4K. It's not a problem. It may not be as forward thinking for what's coming next, but we all know the high speed HDMI label will work for 4K. Is 2.0 better? Well, only because it has additional overhead and may take advantage of additional features that may be coming quicker than we like. So is it safer? Yeah, it's safer. You get into the money arguments. Obviously, high-speed HDMI is 1/3, quarter of the price potentially of a 2.0 cable. Is my life as a consumer improved by the 2.0 cable? Not now. But there's a little bit, I don't like using the term because there's no such thing as future-proofing, but obviously if I buy the next TV, in theory, my 2.0 cable was probably better set for it. But I don't think it's as much a major concern as making sure the pieces and parts that lead up to my display are compatible and have the proper standards with them also.
Bruce, how important do you think it is to have Ethernet in DisplayPort, to have that return audio channel in DisplayPort similar to the HDMI 2.0 standards?
Again, I think it gets down to what the application is and what you're doing. I think as much as you can have that availability makes life ultimately easier and more flexible for the customer. Features that they may not be taking advantage right away. If they want to make a quick switch, they want to enhance what they're doing. I think to have the full availability of tools is always a great idea. Again, I would hope in a discussion of a bigger system, the difference between a $40 cable and $20 cable is not a subject that's at the table, but it's going to cost me $20 difference. So, erring on the side of caution, yeah, using the 2.0 cable is a good idea because you have those additional feature sets, the additional bandwidth and performance and those types of things. But, it can be easily overplayed as well. And so you just got to be careful about the conversation.
All right. So, yeah. Let me ask you this question, actually, though, then. How much weight do you put on the little premium certification label that the HDMI.org or the HDMI forum tries to put out? Is that a selling point? Does it matter? Or are you finding that the cables you get in general are fine? John, I'll give you a quick moment with that one.
Depends on the manufacturer. It's hard to tell where some of these cables come from. I think having that designation is probably going to give you some reassurance. I think it's probably equivalent to any other label that says this is bona fide, this is certified. It's good for you. It's good for what you want.
And Bruce, do you find that that's a selling point? Do you find that that this helps with the sale for the client, or does it really not matter and you're just going to do it because you do it?
Well, yeah, it's not even a conversation that we have with the clients. And we have literally we have a published book at our place for the standards that we use. And we are very selective, and some would call it snobby, about the manufacturers we use for our cabling. And we always do very thorough testing when something new comes out, much like these HDMI cables, a great example. We went through several manufacturers, not so much about what the label said, the certification. Did we plug it in and did it work? And all the technical issues that are associated with it. If you stick to the high quality manufacturers, the ones that you know always adhere to the standards, you don't have a problem. And again, that's passed through invisibly to the client. I can't remember the last client we had a discussion about the actual cabling per se.
Well, another topic that we don't have a conversation with our clients with, but we may have to very shortly, from our friends at Advertising Age. Yes, I know. Why am I sharing something from Advertising Age? Well, location tracking and the trouble with opting in. Here's why I bring this up. We are doing, especially on the commercial side, more and more, well, you know what, even on the residential side, more and more systems that are learnable, that learn what we do, that are keeping track of where we are and how close we are. Say a key lock system or something of that nature. This article in Advertising Age talks about the fact that sometimes when you opt into an app, you are also giving your information to third, fourth, and maybe even fifth level parties. And did you know you were opting in to them? So I'm going to pose the question here with our new ability to do cloud services and to oversee what's going on with, say, their Wi-Fi and their lighting and other such things. I'm going to start with you, Bruce. Based on the name of your company, the human circuit, this may involve a lot of that. How much of it are we responsible for keeping safe and private? And how much of it is really, I know it's an advantage and I'm going to know that that's what's going to happen to me when I say my lights come on at 7, people will know.
Yeah, very tricky question, frankly. Specifically the location piece is an interesting one because, as a nation, we got outraged with the NSA invading our privacy and picking off our emails and everything else. But we're very quick to your point a moment ago about clicking on the app that says, "Hey, we're going to use your location." You go, "Okay," partly because you feel you're obligated to do so because they won't let you use it if you don't. So it's a little bit of a trick. Is it harmful? Is it dangerous? I think when we start to put together our own, softwares and those types of things that we deliver, our customization, I think we have to be very, very careful of who the customer is, where their placement is, what industry they're in, and be sensitive to protecting that client and their information. I mentioned the cloud before. We felt the cloud from some of the manufacturers that are out there is invasive, specifically in mining that type of information for their own and maybe third-party use. And that's why we have not been as quick to adopt cloud strategies for some of our customers. It's not appropriate. And again, we don't feel that sharing of that information provides an upside for the client itself. And that's what we're focused on. So yeah, we're paying attention to it. Obviously, we're not an app developer, and that's where most of this is coming from. We don't deploy a lot of that type of app, But the things that we are deploying, we're very, very cautious on the security side about third-party sharing of information. And, our recommendation to our clients is going to be if there's an upside or benefit for them because of what you mentioned, George, in terms of maybe AI, the AI side of things, as we move more and more into that, the learning of systems and the use of the systems can provide an end user advantage. But again, I think it's a very, very slippery slope.
John, Bruce brings up the fact that they're trying to be very careful, and they are tiptoeing into this level of the cloud service and being responsible for access to data. But do we know if the manufacturers are? I mean, they seem like very, innocuous apps. Open your door, learn your lighting, be able to access your house from remotely to see what's going on. But as integrators, are we taking the responsibility to make sure that we understand what the complications, maybe even the legalities are, so that both we and our clients are protected? I still don't see a clear, a clear platform in our industry for that.
I don't think integrators think about it, to be honest with you. I mean, with the exception of Bruce's company and probably a few others, which, Bruce's company sounds like it pays a lot more attention to those details than most integrators do. I think most integrators are really just more interested in getting in and getting out, getting the job done correctly so that everything works to the expectations of the customer. I don't think their mindset is really about those types of issues. I do know that in commercial applications, commercial integration, customers are extraordinarily careful about their privacy and about making certain that all their communications are secure. I think that we would be at risk professionally if we integrated an application or some software that inadvertently scraped information from the customer as far as use or location without their permission. Now, most video conferencing and management applications, software, will give you the opportunity to get as much data and mine all that data as possible about the use of systems and so on. But the use of systems within a corporation is information that corporation requires. It's also information that corporation or enterprise deserves to get. And they are essentially immune from any liability for anything that occurs within their companies. We're talking about a different thing when we're talking about private activities or private homes, private residences. I can't really address that other than to know what I do myself, and I'm extraordinarily careful about the kind of information that I share online or that I share with an app. Typically, I lie, and my birthday is a lot different than it always is, and my location is somewhere else because it's not really cogent to what that app is doing for me.
So, John, you're saying you're 21 in areas and like long walks on the beach. Is that how most of them appear?
Oh, no, I don't tell them the truth.
Nice. Okay, well, let's get to one last story here that is a bit far out, but when I host, of course, there's a couple of far out stories because I like to follow the EE Times people and all that. But from our friends this time at Engadget, graphene-fed silkworms spin super threads. Yes, I said that 5 times fast. All right, why did I choose this story? Well, this story is chosen because graphene is carbon atoms. They're very thin carbon atoms. And for those of us who don't think that anybody that wins the Nobel Prize has any effect on our industry, well, guess what? They probably do. The thing about these graphene tubes, they fed them, rolled them up, of course, and fed them to these silkworms. And then the silk that came out of them was not only stronger, but it conducts electricity. My question to you guys is, can you see a future use for this in our industry? Using, say, silk, what is it going to replace? Bruce, I'll start with you.
Well, this is why we have 1 million silkworms in our back room here. We've changed our integration space now, and we have a silkworm farm. We're way ahead of the curve on this one. Now, graphene itself is a fascinating topic purely because of the subjects we've discussed for 20 years now. I remember having this conversation going back with people at Sony about e-paper. Obviously, graphene itself is an interesting substance that could have a lot of benefits for extremely flexible and very durable, surfaces for display, touchscreen, that type of thing. Whether silkworms actually feed into it or not, interesting. I think it's probably going to help me more with my shirt than it is with my display. But graphene itself, I think, is really fascinating. The problem with regulating the power that goes through it is really where they're at this point. That's the problem that scientists are having with it. But the potential, again, for me to coat an entire room in a graphene-related substance so that every surface in there is actually a display has some really cool applications, both in meeting collaboration, but also medical space. I mean, instead we go from talking about heads-up displays to what I would almost call head-down display. It could be literally on the sheet that you're operating beneath, with display inches from where you're doing your work. So there's some really fascinating things. And graphene is a really interesting substance.
Yeah, I've been one to be very eager to see embeddables over wearables, sort of the cybernetic stuff. That seems to me with this graphene stuff to be one of the steps forward, that it can become a second skin. We've all seen that little Kickstarter ad that claimed to show a wrist activated projector that showed very high quality video on your wrist, even in the tub and stuff like that. While that doesn't seem to be very real, this could have potential. So John, I put it to you, do we think in maybe 10, 15 years, a graphene-like product could replace a considerable amount of the hardware we're mounting now? So the days of our flat panel mounts are going to be way over even more?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, graphene, I think graphene's promise has more to do with transmission and optical transmission than it does material manufacturing. Graphene is a nano substance. It's extraordinarily minute. It's what nanotubes are made of, and they're smaller than human hairs. I think that graphene's strength is really in optical transmission, and what much of the research has been on using graphene in circuits to transmit wavelengths, over optical fibers. They're saying that circuits designed with graphene and silicon can transmit data at up to 500 gigahertz, as opposed to what we're doing now, which is much slower. The idea of that kind of speed is astonishing at how immediate we can transmit content, we can transmit information. And I think that's where the promise is. Do I think we're going to be wearing graphene shirts? Probably not. I mean, it'd probably be pretty expensive. Do I think that there will be graphene surfaces for touch panels? Possibly, yeah, because of the ability to transmit optical information. Do I think that a flat panel TV will be made of graphene? No, if I had to predict, I'd say no, but what do I know?
All right. Well, of course, crash my hopes. I was really hoping because, I'd love to just, you've seen the things of the LED panels or whatever, the ones from, I think it was a Toshiba or Samsung, one of the two that you could put them right up against the wall, like a magnetic flat sort of rollable poster. I was just hoping that further.
Yeah, LG.
Yeah. Oh, it's LG. Right. I was hoping. So, I'm still got hope for the second skin for the embeddables kind of thing. Just weave it on me and I'm happy.
The other thing, George, is power ramifications. Further improvement in batteries, which is obviously what's enabled us to do a lot of things we're doing right now. So that's another area.
Yeah, absolutely. The lower power required, the better off we are. All right. Well, we have done another 30 minutes of AV Week. I want to thank all of you for watching, but it's not often that we get to announce something new here, a new show here, a new guest there, and these are great things. But AVWeek or AVNation has actually entered into the awards arena. Yes, we have. So AVNation is announcing its first annual AVNation Awards. You can come to our site, awards-2016.avnation.tv, and you can choose whom you want to nominate. There is no pull-down menu here. There is no suggestion. There is simply wanting to know who you would like to vote for. Here at AVNation, we like to say that we're by and for and made by working AV professionals. This is your chance to have a say and put your vote in for the actual items you want to see. Go there again. It's awards-2016.avnation.tv. We'll put it up on the links Please put in your vote, and we will be releasing that information sometime in February around ISE. Look for it there. This has been a fabulous show with some great guests. I love it when guests get the chance to talk to each other and keep me out of the mix. It makes me happier. So between John and Bruce, this was a really great conversation. When I get to learn some more and I don't have to ask all the questions, it makes my day a lot happier. So to thank those guys in person, first I'm going to go with Bruce Kaufmann from Human Circuit. Bruce, where can they find more about you and the company?
Well, master the obvious, www.humancircuit.com, and we're at Human Circuit 1, obviously on Twitter as well, but the website is the best place, and you can keep an eye on what we're doing. I appreciate the time today.
All right. And almost as my second host was John Thomas from Visetech. Sir, where can they find out more about you and the company?
Visetech.com, Visitech.com is where you find our company and learn more about what we do. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, for everyone here at AVNation, AVWeek, and for my guest, I want to thank you for watching. And remember that AVNation is supported by our underwriters. They help us keep the lights on, get to shows, and, well, give us the time to do this. So please go to our underwriter page, see who they are, and if you get a chance, thank them for doing so. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you. For AVNation, AVWeek, thank you for watching. We look forward to speaking with all of you again very soon.